She's obviously faking it for attention. My sister Amanda's voice drifted through my partially open hospital door. I mean, look at her, sitting there in that wheelchair like some kind of victim. I gripped the armrests of my wheelchair, my knuckles turning white as I listened to my family discuss my fate in the hallway. 3 weeks after my car crash, and they were already convinced I was putting on an act. My name is Olivia Parker, and at 29, I never expected to hear my family plotting against me while I was still recovering from a near-fatal accident. The crash had left me with a shattered leg, 3 broken ribs, and a family that seemed determined to prove I was lying about everything. The insurance company is asking questions. My mother's worried voice chimed in. If they find out about the property transfer before the accident. They won't. My father cut her off sharply. As far as anyone knows, we moved the house into Amanda's name months ago. Olivia's medical bills aren't our problem. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. The house they were talking about was my grandmother's cottage, left to me in her will. I've been living there for the past year, fixing it up, making it my home. Now, somehow, it belonged to Amanda. The accident had happened on a rainy night. I was driving home from my job as a physical therapist when my brakes failed. The police called it a tragic accident, but something felt off. The mechanic had just checked my car the week before. What about her stuff? Amanda asked. She can't stay at the cottage anymore. Not in her condition. The rehabilitation center has an opening, my mother replied. We'll move her there tomorrow. It's for the best, really. She needs professional care. Professional care? Right. What they really meant was they needed me out of the way. What they didn't know was that I'd installed a dash cam in my car 2 months ago. It was a small thing, barely noticeable, recording everything in front and inside the car. I hadn't checked the footage yet. My phone with the dashcam app was still in police evidence. She's always been the dramatic one. Amanda continued, her voice dripping with disdain. Remember when she claimed grandmother promised her the cottage, as if she'd choose Olivia over me? I almost laughed at that. Grandmother had chosen me precisely because Amanda had never shown any interest in the cottage. She called it a rundown shack and mocked my efforts to restore it. Dr. Torres, my physical therapist, walked in then, cutting off the rest of their conversation. She took one look at my face and frowned. Rough day, she asked, closing the door firmly. You could say that, I replied, trying to smile. My family's planning to ship me off to a rehabilitation center tomorrow. Dr. Torres' eyebrows shot up. Without consulting me, I'm your primary physician. You're nowhere near ready for transfer. I shrugged, wincing at the pain in my ribs. They seem to think I'm faking my injuries. She pulled out her tablet, typing furiously. Well, your x-rays and MRI results say otherwise. Don't worry, they can't transfer you without my approval. As she helped me with my exercises, I thought about the dash cam. The police had said they'd return my phone soon. I just needed to hold on a little longer. That evening, Officer Martinez came by with an evidence bag containing my belongings from the crash. My phone was there, cracked but still functional. The investigation is ongoing, he said, watching me carefully. The brake lines were definitely tampered with. Any idea who might want to hurt you? I thought about my family's conversation about the property transfer they'd mentioned. I might have some ideas. After he left, I pulled up the dashcam app with trembling fingers. The footage from that night was there, including the interior camera feed. I started watching from an hour before the crash. What I saw made my blood run cold. There, in crystal clear video, was Amanda, leaning under my car in the parking lot where I worked. The timestamp showed 6:43 p.m., just 2 hours before my accident. The audio picked up her phone conversation. It's done. The brake lines won't last more than a few miles. Once she's out of the way, the cottage is ours. No one will question a car accident on a rainy night. I sat there in my hospital bed, staring at the screen, my heart pounding. All this time, they'd been calling me a faker, saying I was seeking attention, while they had actually tried to. I couldn't even finish the thought. A knock at my door made me quickly lock my phone. Amanda walked in, carrying a small bag. We're moving you to the rehabilitation center first thing tomorrow, she announced, not even bothering to ask how I was feeling. I brought you some clothes to pack. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. How had I never seen the coldness in her eyes before? Thanks, I said quietly, slipping my phone under my pillow. You've been so helpful. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That's what family is for, right? Right? Family. The same family that had tried to kill me for a cottage. As she left, I picked up my phone again, my hands steady now. I knew exactly what I needed to do. They thought I was helpless, useless, a burden to be discarded. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, while my family was busy arranging my transfer to the rehabilitation center, I made two important calls. The first was to Officer Martinez, the second to my grandmother's lawyer, Marcus Sullivan. "Let me get this straight," Marcus said, his voice sharp with concern. "They transferred the property while you were unconscious in the hospital." "Yes," I replied, keeping my voice low, "and I have video evidence of Amanda tampering with my car before the accident." There was a long pause. "Have you shown this to the police?" "Officer Martinez is coming this afternoon. I wanted to talk to you first about the property transfer." "Good thinking," Marcus said. "Your grandmother was very specific in her will. Any attempt to transfer the property without your consent would be fraudulent. Send me everything you have. I'll file an emergency injunction." I ended the call just as my mother walked in, carrying a stack of transfer papers. "The rehabilitation center needs these signed," she said, not meeting my eyes. "It's a lovely facility, Olivia. You'll be well cared for." I took the papers, pretending to read them. "Where's Amanda? I thought she'd want to help with the transfer." "Oh, she's at the cottage, clearing out your things. We'll store them for you, of course." Of course. How convenient that Amanda was already moving into my home before I'd even signed the transfer papers. "Mom," I said softly, "did you ever wonder why grandmother left me the cottage instead of Amanda?" She stiffened. "Your sister said you manipulated her, took advantage of her dementia." "Grandmother didn't have dementia," I cut in. "She had all her faculties when she made her will. Marcus Sullivan can testify to that." The color drained from my mother's face at the lawyer's name. "You've spoken to Marcus." "This morning. He was very interested in hearing about the property transfer and about my accident." Before she could respond, Officer Martinez appeared in the doorway, another officer beside him. "Mrs. Parker," he said formally, "we need to speak with you about the night of your daughter's accident." My mother's face went pale. I don't know anything about that night." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "I think you do. The dash cam in my car recorded some very interesting conversations." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Officers took my mother's statement while others went to the cottage to find Amanda. My father, arriving late with coffee, walked straight into a police interrogation. Dr. Torres stood firmly against any transfer attempts, documenting every interaction with my family. The rehabilitation center papers disappeared unsigned. By evening, Amanda was in custody. The dashcam footage had captured not only her tampering with my car, but also a damning phone conversation with our parents about the property transfer. "We found the forged documents in your sister's car," Officer Martinez told me later, "along with a draft of what appears to be a suicide note written to look like your handwriting." I felt sick. They hadn't just wanted me out of the way. They planned to make it look like I killed myself after faking my injuries. Marcus arrived as the officers were leaving, carrying a thick folder of documents. "The judge granted the emergency injunction," he said, sitting beside my bed. "The property transfer has been frozen, and I filed a civil suit against your family for fraud." I nodded, feeling oddly empty. They really hated me that much? Enough to? "This isn't about hate," Marcus said gently. "It's about greed. Your grandmother knew that. It's why she was so careful with her will." A nurse brought in my evening medication, along with an unexpected visitor, my grandmother's old housekeeper, Mrs. Sullivan. "Oh, sweet girl," she said, hurrying to my side. "I came as soon as I heard. I should have warned you when I saw Amanda at the cottage last month asking about the security cameras." "Security cameras?" I asked, confused. Mrs. Sullivan nodded. "Your grandmother had them installed years ago, after a break-in. They're still active. I have access to the feeds." Marcus straightened. "Those cameras would have recorded everything. The property transfer discussion, their plans." "Already saved everything," Mrs. Sullivan said, patting her bag. "I may be old, but I know how to use a computer." For the first time since the accident, I felt tears rolling down my cheeks. Not tears of pain or fear, but of relief. All this time, I hadn't been alone. My grandmother had protected me even after she was gone. That night, as I lay in my hospital bed, My phone lit up with a text from Officer Martinez. Amanda's talking. Your parents are being brought in for questioning. You're safe now. Safe. What a strange word. I looked out my window at the city lights, thinking about the cottage, about my grandmother, about the family I thought I had versus the people who had tried to destroy me. Dr. Torres had said my physical recovery would take months, but watching my family's carefully constructed lives crumble had taken less than 24 hours. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more revelations, more painful truths. But for now, I closed my eyes, finally able to rest without fear. They had called me useless, tried to discard me, but in the end, their own actions had exposed their true nature. And I was anything but helpless. 6 months after the accident, I stood on the porch of my grandmother's cottage, my cottage, watching the autumn leaves dance across the lawn. My leg had healed enough that I only needed a cane now, and Dr. Torres said even that would be temporary. The criminal trial had concluded last week. Amanda was sentenced to 15 years for attempted murder and fraud. My parents, faced with overwhelming evidence of their involvement, had taken a plea deal. They would serve 5 years each, plus restitution. Everything looks perfect, Mrs. Sullivan said, joining me on the porch with 2 steaming mugs of tea. The garden's blooming just like your grandmother would have wanted. I accepted the tea gratefully. Mrs. Sullivan had become my rock through all of this, helping me recover while simultaneously maintaining the cottage. She'd moved into the guest house, claiming she was too old to live alone, but I knew she was watching over me. The physical therapy center called, I said, sipping my tea. They want me to come work for them once I'm fully recovered. Said my experience as a patient gives me a unique perspective. Your grandmother would be proud, she smiled. She always said you had a healer's heart. The sound of tires on gravel drew our attention. Marcus's car pulled up, followed by Officer Martinez's police cruiser. Ladies, Marcus called out, waving a folder. We got the final paperwork from the court. The property is officially secured in an ironclad trust. No one can touch it but you. Officer Martinez joined us on the porch, declining tea but accepting a cookie from Mrs. Sullivan's seemingly endless supply. We found something interesting in Amanda's storage unit, he said. Looks like she'd been planning this for years. Had a whole folder of forged documents, including some with your grandmother's signature. I wasn't surprised. Amanda had always been methodical in her schemes. What happens to her house? I asked. The one she bought with my insurance money? Marcus smiled. It's being sold to pay your restitution. Poetic justice, don't you think? Indeed it was. The insurance payout from my accident had been substantial. Amanda had immediately used it to buy a luxurious house, thinking I'd either be dead or institutionalized. Now it would fund my complete recovery and then some. There's something else, Officer Martinez added, his expression serious. We found letters from your parents to Amanda, dating back to before your grandmother's death. They were planning this even then, waiting for the right moment. The revelation should have hurt, but I felt oddly detached. The family I'd known, or thought I'd known, had never really existed. The community center called, I said, changing the subject. They want to start a support group for victims of family fraud. Asked if I'd share my story. Mrs. Sullivan beamed. You should do it. Help others while helping yourself. She was right. Throughout this ordeal, I discovered strength I never knew I had. Maybe my experience could help others find their strength too. Later that evening, after everyone had left, I sat in my grandmother's old study, now mine. The wall behind the desk held 2 new additions, the dashcam that had saved my life, and a photo of my grandmother on the day she'd given me the cottage. My phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Kate, the only family member who'd stood by me. Mom's asking if you'll ever forgive them. I thought about forgiveness, about the months of physical therapy, the nightmares of the crash, the betrayal that cut deeper than any injury. Some things aren't meant to be forgiven, I texted back. Just learned from. The next morning, I started my day as I had for the past month. Physical therapy exercises, followed by work on my new project. I was writing a book, part memoir, part guide for others facing family betrayal. Dr. Torres had suggested it as therapy, but it had become something more. Mrs. Sullivan brought in the mail, including a thick envelope from the insurance company. The final settlement had been approved, including punitive damages. I was now financially secure for life, though that had never been my goal. What will you do with it? she asked, arranging flowers in a vase, another of my grandmother's traditions she kept alive. Start a foundation, I said, the idea crystallizing as I spoke. Help other victims of family fraud rebuild their lives. Legal aid, therapy, whatever they need. She nodded approvingly. Your grandmother always said money was best used helping others. That's why she left the cottage to you, not Amanda. She knew you'd understand that. Looking around at the home I'd fought so hard to keep, I felt a deep sense of peace. My family had tried to destroy me, thinking I was weak, useless, easily discarded. Instead, they'd helped me discover my true strength. The cottage wasn't just a house anymore. It had become a symbol of survival, of justice, of rising above betrayal to build something meaningful. And as I watched the sun set over my grandmother's garden, I knew this was just the beginning of my story. Some would call it revenge, this complete reversal of fortune. But I prefer to think of it as justice, served with a side of truth captured on